Recently on social media, people were making fun of a poster on Hacker News for suggesting that a €20 independent game, which had a development budget of perhaps €500,000, was not as good a value as an €80 AAA game that had a budget of €200 million. And the reasoning was because if you just do the math, it's clearly 400 times the value to buy the AAA game instead of the independent game. Now, people really made fun of this person on social media, but what I don't think those people understand is that it's exactly how it does in fact work in the professional game industry. And so I wanted to explain to you, just so people could understand a little bit better, since people who are on the outside maybe don't really realize this. In the game industry, we are very aware of what we call our cost per anus. So if you look, for example, at a AAA game, there are 3 A's in a AAA game, compared to an indie game, which of course doesn't have any A's at all. We call the number of A's that are present in a particular product, its anus. And one of our goals as developers on any given project is to try to maximize this anus with the development funds that we're given. So this Hacker News poster was right on the money. They astutely recognized that they were getting far more anus for their money than when they buy an indie game and get almost no anus at all. Now, this is not to say that you should never buy an indie game, because sometimes indie games, due to their trajectory, end up having very large development budgets and therefore are able to stretch from not having much anus at all to having a lot of anus, a lot more anus than you would think. For example, the game Star Citizen is a classic example of how they stretched the anus almost to the breaking point, whereas now if you were to look at the game Star Citizen, you would probably say that it had just as much anus as a typical AAA release, even though that's not how it started off. So just because a developer doesn't set out to make something with a lot of anus, they may end up making something with a lot of anus anyway. So it's always worth checking to see what the development budget ended up being. Just because you think a particular game doesn't have a lot of anus in it, you may find out that in fact it has effectively triple anus anyway. So hopefully that clarifies this terminology for people. And just as a reminder, I really would suggest not making fun of people who post on Hacker News about things like this, because they're just trying to explain how anus affects them and how they value anus. And if you don't value anus the same way that they do, that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means they appreciate anus and you don't.